Hey everyone, hope you're having a good day. This is Henrik. Welcome and thank you for being here. You can hear Red Ice Radio on SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, and of course through our website redice.tv. Make sure you subscribe to the RSS feeds with either iTunes or your favorite podcatcher app to get the latest show as soon as it's out. We also do regular videos and a live TV show for members. We're doing our first one of the new year on Saturday, the 14th of January. Check out redicemembers.com for more info about that. We are speaking with Nick Monroe today. He's a gaming journalist who has worked for the Escapist magazine and Gameranx. He's been intimately involved with Gamergate since its inception, and he has also witnessed Milo Yiannopoulos' narcissistic rise to popularity firsthand. So today we're going to talk with someone about the fumbling with funds in regards to Milo, like the white privilege grant, the $250,000 book contract that Milo got from Simon & Schuster, and the deplorable debacle as well. You know, Nick has worked behind the scenes with Milo and also seen how many of these other Johnny-come-latelys have jumped on the alt-right to promote themselves and their brand. Stay tuned. Hey, Nick, good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm willing to go wherever this road takes me, really.
Very good. You know, I've been following your Twitter on and off in the last few weeks or so, getting updates on the Milo Yiannopoulos situation. You've been looking into that, of course. We've done some of our own questioning, if you will, in a few of our videos. If nothing else, Milo definitely seems like a very sly opportunist. But I do have to admit, I took some time off over Christmas and New Year, something I haven't actually done for almost like 10 years since I started the show. So anyway, I've been a bit I've been a bit out of the loop. I have to say I've not been catching up on all the latest debacle, both around Milo, but also the deplorable and all that kind of stuff. So I was hoping to kind of get an update and get up to speed, from you on the matter, Nick. But before we get into the details, tell us about your relationship to Milo.
Oh, yeah. I ran a YouTube channel for a few years, and when Gamergate started up a few years ago, I was there in the same neck of the woods as everyone else was in Gamergate. And Milo was able to waltz right in and blow the whole thing open with a Game Journal Pros, which basically was the foundation of Gamergate's concerns. They were worried about collusion in the media, and they were really pushing back against this leftist type of media coverage from games journalists. So Milo was able to, over the course of a few years, basically offer people an alternative. And now, I had to say, it pretty much worked, because we have this sense of balance. You know what I mean?
No, explain that a bit more.
Okay, so basically, before 2014 and when Gamergate started off, it was just Kotaku, Polygon, PC Gamer, Ars Technica, and The Escapist, which I worked at for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, if there was a story about harassment or, women in gaming, stuff like that, everyone towed the same line. They just reworded it a little bit, from outlet to outlet. But that whole system kind of turned itself on its head when Gamergate happened, and people were against this sort of unified cookie-cutter sort of messaging. And they had concerns about that, as well as disclosures. And as a result of Milo's findings that he reported on Breitbart, he was able to kind of spur the Escapist to clean house, more or less. And they really turned a dime in trying to change how they did things.
So Milo was working for Breitbart at that time, right?
Yeah, Milo has been at Breitbart for... He started out at Breitbart London. I know that. And he started off as kind of a shy person. Kind of a shy and more, modest than he is now.
Yeah.
Because after seeing what Milo started out as and seeing him kind of blossom into this very strange blonde flower over time. It's been really interesting because Gamergate kind of gave him confidence. It gave him the confidence to pursue the harder stories and kind of build his own image and reputation with the gaming community. And that's what gave him the leverage to basically, turn on a dime and start, pushing Trump. And that's essentially how the whole alt-right thing started. People try to put a link between Gamergate and the alt-right, and there is, but no one has explained it well enough because they go with the whole harassment angle and they push that. But if they were to take a step back and consider the other point of view, it's essentially when the public, the gaming community public of Gamergate was more vocal about the leftist media, and that kind of planted kind of the seeds of the alt-right in a sense. So that's essentially why things are the way they are now.
So there was no kind of, I guess, critical dissenting voices within when the whole Gamergate kind of issue started to unfurl. And
yes, there was.
Okay.
Everyone, well, the gaming journalists kind of at first, all the gaming journalists that were under scrutiny from Gamergate kind of brushed Milo off and kind of said he's just not a part of our clubhouse. He's
Right.
nothing. But then Milo just ignored them and did his own thing. And the more he did his own thing, the more jimmies he wrestled with the gaming press. And by the time they realized that mistake, it was far too late. Milo had pretty much established a foothold.
Yeah, exactly. So that, he jumped on the SJW trail. That's really kind of what got him out there as well.
Yes.
A lot of things have happened since then, but how was for just those that didn't follow Gamergate from the start, I guess you've really been part of that since the start.
Yep.
So it wasn't really an issue, right? Of all all the video games and everything, it has to be this inclusiveness. It was specifically about all these feminists are kind of trying to take over the area, right? It was like one domain where guys still had something of their own, basically, right? The whole gamosphere, and then this started to change, right? And at that point,
it's all about the nuance, because if you say you're against diversity and you're against, inclusiveness, you sound like an asshole. But no one really is against that stuff. It's all about the fact that they pushed it more and tried to make it the only message instead of just letting things naturally be.
Mm-hmm, right.
And that hyper focus is what got under people's skin, and that's why
they pushed it a little bit too far for the normies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what Gamergate was, essentially a bunch of accidents put together, and Milo saw those accidents as opportunities.
That's right. He's as I said, definitely an opportunist, a sly one at that. And maybe he's sincere in some of his, critiques or some of his, concerns or whatever. But we'll get more to that. So, okay, so have you since that time? Let's kind of take this up to the current
The current
day
year.
here. Yeah, the current year, exactly. Tell us a bit about what you've found, because there's a lot of things that happened with Milo. There's a lot of controversy around him, obviously. There's also a more go ahead.
Well, I just type in Milo Yiannopoulos into Google News, and I can just scroll through and just see, yep, that's Milo. Yep. There's protesters in Michigan or something. And I can just... He became a provocateur. That's what they call him now. He used to be a reporter. And they're playing right into his hands. They even know they're playing right into his hands. Milo is fueled on people getting pissed off. And that's why it's pretty darn brilliant, because people are reactionary. But the thing that finally broke this spell, the thing that kind of woke people up for the first time, is the whole charity, the the white privilege charity grant, I think it's called.
Yep.
The privilege grant. He started that pet project back in like January 2016, and I didn't take him seriously at the time, but it was apparently serious after some of his colleagues got into a bit of a situation with essentially there was a Slack group, and some of Milo's acquaintances, which he would go on to deny are his acquaintances whatsoever, they were going after an escapist person, and since I was working at the escapist at the time, I was kind of put into this rock and hard place situation, and I told Milo he had to clean up his act back then.
What did you say more specifically regarding that?
Well, the acquaintance in question pretty much said Milo said to go after this chick, more or less, and I was like, "Holy crap, Milo! This is going to turn bad really fast." So I recommend just cutting off all these, you know. I hate to use the word problematic, but they kind of are, because they were notorious for doing things like doxing people in the middle of their streams. I know at least one video got taken down from this person's channel because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know who Pterodax is?
No, I don't.
He's one of those, hacker types. The kind of like the dark underside of Twitter. And Milo hung out with him, and I mean not Milo. Milo's acquaintance, who I guess I should just explain who he is.
Yeah, do that.
The Ralph Retort.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, the Ralph Retort, who is scheduled to be in jail at some point, apparently.
Really? Why is that?
He punched a cop, and it didn't work out in his favor.
Maybe it was justified. Who knows? Anyway, I kind of like some of the stuff they do over at the Ralph Retort. Anyway, go on with your story.
Yeah, well, I spent years trying to get Ralph to clean up his act a bit, and I didn't want to see him, get into a situation he couldn't get out of. But over time, I kind of lost him. He kind of just said screw it. He just became something nasty. But anyway,
I think it's good. I mean, we might disagree then. That's perfectly fine. I think it's good to have some people who are really, really pushing back at the insanity, if you will. Actually, we could save that for a little bit later, because we can get into that more when we kind of talk about the alt-right.
Yeah, I should jump back and explain what's going on right now.
Yeah,
but the whole deplorable incident is where basically these figures of the alt-right, like Milo and Mike Cernovich, basically told some of the other figures that they needed to clean up their image, and they started to make it about a branding thing. And according to Baked Alaska, I don't know his real name, but that's his Twitter handle.
Yep, know of him.
Baked Alaska basically just leaked everything that Cernovich was telling him, and they had this big falling out. And that falling out, which the DMs he posted were basically like, don't talk about Nazi stuff, don't mention Jewish people. And I couldn't believe Cernovich was saying that. Mike Cernovich, man, he was much more willing to be bold than he is now. And to see him try to tone himself back is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then from there, when Baked Alaska pretty much went forward with all this, and he ended up taking over the Twitter account for the deplorable event or whatever, and he basically shit talked the whole thing.
It's kind of funny, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us, Nick, before we talk more about the deplorables, because I want to back up and talk about the the grant issue, right?
It actually comes back to that because Baked Alaska did his thing, and then Margaret McLennan, I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm so sorry, Margaret. She saw that and decided to come forward about the thing I was helping her out with, essentially. She came to me sometime before and she told me that Milo had one of his thugs, and that's the official job title this person has. He calls himself Curve Me. And Curve Me, also known as Kevin Cordova, I'll just call him Curve Me for the sake of it. Kevin Cordova went to E3 and basically shit up the joint. And he's got this whole video of him, you know, being confrontational with just bystanders, making it seem like a party when it's supposed to be an industry event. It's supposed to be a professional setting, and he just... That and the tweets he made where he said he wanted to, quote unquote, fuck some girl, some hot nerd, and he wanted to sell his E3 press pass, that doesn't fly at all. So I can kind of see what Cernovich was saying when people need to clean up their image, because what Milo's, thug Curve Me did was disrespectful to the message that Milo himself was trying to push these last few years about professionalism. But apparently that's all out the window now.
Right.
And initially, when Margaret came forward about all this, it was like 1 a.m. So I got to stay up for a few hours that night and just basically come forward about all this because Margaret decided to tag me in.
So give us a bit more about what she more specifically revealed and kind of what you found out along the way too.
Margaret was basically the charity manager, I think. Basically the person who got to see the money go from place to place. And what was revealed back in August of 2016 was Milo put the money in his personal bank account or something.
Mm-hmm.
And Margaret spoke out about that, and Milo cut her off. Milo cut her out of the loop, and Milo offered her $500 to basically be quiet or something.
Right.
And of course she didn't take it, because here we are now. And ever since then, there's been kind of this fracture growing, because the whole charity mishap essentially woke people up to what was going on.
Yeah.
That maybe the splendor of Milo Yiannopoulos isn't as grand as it seems.
So, some people pointed out, for example, his tour bus, that you don't get that cheap. There's millions of dollars involved there, and I don't know if it's Breitbart or if it's something else, but there seems to be a lot of money behind Milo as well.
There is a shit ton of money behind Milo.
Yeah.
You want to oh man, between what happened with Gamergate and what happened with his speaking tours, there's Milo and there's Milo TM. Because Milo TM is his brand, pretty much. He's gone the Trump route of basically selling his name as an image. And it actually connects to why he's got so much money behind him, because Breitbart is going all in on that.
Yeah, so is it Breitbart where the money comes from, or is it someone else?
That's a good question, and that has been something that's been tossed around. Because of the fact we can't tell, means Breitbart and Milo should be considered two separate things. We should stop thinking of Milo of Breitbart. It's Milo and Breitbart. Milo has grown so much in popularity, and people's, you can't stop hearing about Milo. I'm sorry, you can't. It's a fact. I don't go a day without hearing about Milo, and I don't intentionally look for him. And he was able to, when he grew, he was able to grow Breitbart's name too. but they kind of grew separately. They're joined, but they're not joined. Because Milo put his pieces up on Breitbart, so people go to Breitbart. But so as Milo's image grows, so does Breitbart's. But to say Milo is representing Breitbart would not. I don't think that's true anymore. I honestly believe that he's a separate entity.
Yeah, I mean, he has his own, his own agenda, and he has his own, marketing and branding to do, obviously. But yeah, he's been, tied in with them. And of course, ever since the rise of Trump and many people jumping on that, you've of course had the Steve Bannon kind of issue as well, getting closer and closer to Trump and pushed that. So he kind of all of this kind of happened at the right time to a certain extent. Yep. I'm not saying that there wasn't money behind it, because what it seems like to me, Nick, is that Milo has also been. I mean, look at how the media treated this ever since the rise of the alt-right. And again, we might disagree here. There is definitely an alt-light, and then there is an alt-right.
I agree.
But nonetheless, what the media did is that they jumped on Milo as the face for the alt-right, even despite the fact that he many, many times said, well, I'm not that. I don't know why the media is pointing that out, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, we could clearly see that he was kind of enjoying that and jumping on that and using that to his advantage. So, the question is whether or not, again, as I go back to that point, was this just a kind of a good timing issue for him? Or is there someone that kind of, I don't know, a little bit more behind the scenes, kind of wanted someone like Milo to be the face of the rising discontent that we've seen in America and mainstream politics? Because a lot of people are really angry for obvious reasons. And a lot of that anger is usually, channeled, if you will, in such a way that people don't get, too out of hand too quick. And I don't know still if Milo is just a kind of an accident in that equation, or if he's a planned kind of cog in that machine, if you see what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. No, I see what you're saying. It's with Milo, he does represent something. It kind of represents a bit of a freedom to do whatever the hell you want. And Milo certainly does that. You look at what happened with him in Twitter. And that was a crucial moment in Milo basically breaking out and defining himself as a rebellious type of figure. And that rebellious figure was able to basically take the piss on Twitter. And the fact that people talked about his Twitter ban, the fact that we talked about his Twitter ban, something so small, it's revealing as to how far Milo came at that point. And he was able to turn that into a free speech issue. And at the time, people back in January 2016 were really getting into waking up to that. And so they saw what happened to Milo, and they stood right behind him. And they said, this is bullshit. And it was, to a certain extent. But people kept talking about it, and making it more than what it is. But they really branched, they really bridged the actual issue to what the issue was representing. And going back to what you were saying.
Yeah, obviously it's good that people focus on that issue, because it is a real issue in our day and age. I think even there was a statement by Twitter by Jack, who was like, well, we want Twitter to be a utility, more or less, and of course, which puts them in a different realm. It's how people communicate, it's how they get the word out, and the banning that's happened consequently on Bitter, I guess that's the right word, on Twitter.
Yeah,
on Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah, slip up there. But it's just out of control. It's just people are getting banned and kicked off left and right. And it's really just kind of run amok at this point. So obviously the focus needs to be there. It is a real issue and real concern. But at the same time, people love kind of an underdog. They love an outsider. They love someone who's kind of suppressed. And that's been my feeling of Milo at the start. It's almost like, he's homosexual. He out of his own mouth talks about how he only screws black guys all the time, right? And supposedly he's this racist and he's this I don't know, some white supremacist tied into Breitbart if you listen to the mainstream media, which is, of course, nonsense as well. But to me, it seems that he jumped on the alt-right bandwagon as well early on because it's almost like, I mean, let's face it, being a homosexual in our day and age isn't no longer something which is, it's not unacceptable. It's almost the reverse. I see
what you're saying.
And it's almost like he's jumping on this because it's a way for him to become one of these suppressed outsiders again.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and it started back during the Gamergate period of time. That's why he kind of jumped on that boat. In November 2014, I have to say, it was when Randy Harper, who's basically this programmer chick from San Francisco, she made a Twitter block list that used my account, Milo's account, and like 5 other accounts, and used our followers, used people who followed us as prerequisites to being defined as what Gamergate was. They called it the GG auto blocker or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that moment, it is when Gamergate really started turning into like a free speech being, suppressed issue. And so these things Milo learned back then, he was able to take those lessons and apply it to the whole alt-right bandwagon. And it's really, I mean, it's natural, really, because one thing after another happens, in sequence. And Milo was just doing the next step. If I had to guess, Milo has some sort of plans to go, across the globe. I don't know how, but he'll try because that's all that's left.
Milo's world tour. Yeah, the Dangerous Faggot world tour. So let's return to this issue of what Mar-a-Lago or Margaret's Belly, kind of found with the finances and everything else, because there's even these cheesy, when Milo did his inside of his bus tour thing or whatever, and there's like he did photo shoots and all kinds of stuff. He had like tons of money and things like this, almost like a, welcome to my crib, kind of this hip hop thing. But supposedly that wasn't real money.
Yeah, that wasn't real money. Fake money.
But who knows, right?
No, I'm pretty, like, the people I talked to about this are pretty confident in the fact that it's not real money. Like, there's theories that it's not real money, but then there's, like, people are pretty sure. And that, to me, was a sign that things have gotten kind of, it made me doubt everything I thought I knew about Milo from the Gamergate years,
Mm-hmm.
And every time Milo had a sort of Gamergate meetup, it ended up in a bomb threat. And now I'm curious as to why it was isolated to pretty much just Milo. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why Milo and Gamergate meetups have bomb threats? Nowhere else. There were a bunch of Gamergate meetups, but it only ended up with Milo's.
I think it's fake, or
I have questions that I can't answer because I don't know the answers, and I really want the answers, but I don't have them. And Milo in the Gamergate years the figures of the alt right now, like Cernovich and so forth, it was all formed because of Gamergate, because all these people networking on Twitter, and that's how they got to know one another. So that's how the whole alt-right thing came up, and that's how these people were involved in the deplorable thing. And then when when Baked Alaska had shared what Milo had sent him, where he was threatening to sue Baked Alaska based on some sort of NDA,
mm-hmm.
I was like, son of a bitch, Milo, what the fuck happened? Pardon my language. You're okay with it?
Oh, of course. You're good. Go ahead.
What the fuck, Milo? That's not Milo talking. That's some sort of, anti-Milo. That's not the Milo I used to know.
Well, maybe it's the real Milo, huh?
Well, that's another question, because there's accusations he had ghostwriters. You remember those?
Tell us about those. Remind us.
BuzzFeed basically published a piece March 31st, March 30 fucking first, saying Milo is run by ghostwriters. And they allege in this BuzzFeed piece that Milo is made up of a group of people who basically write his stories for him. And they do all the legwork. I can personally attest to some of this. It's even though they were able to write it off as a joke at the time, because BuzzFeed, being the geniuses they are, decided to release it so close to April Fool's Day. You wonder what would have happened? Right. I mean, I talked to the dude who wrote that piece, and I was like, you idiots. You released this on March 31st, and you don't think people are going to write it off as a joke? And he's like, yeah, we weren't thinking. No shit, you weren't thinking. And when this stuff came up again recently with the deplorable and all that, I decided to look into what was going on with the whole ghostwriters thing, and I found them. I met Milo's ghostwriter crew. Well, I kind of knew some of them, but I was surprised to hear there was. It kind of the conversation kind of happened on accident because of everything that was coming up with what I was saying on Twitter in relation to what Margaret brought me into. I was DM'd because I keep my Twitter DMs open, so I get all the surprises inside the magic box. And I met Milo's ghostwriters. I can personally confirm they exist. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna spoil the fun and explain who they are, but I can kind of tell you what they did if you want.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, these weren't just guys BSing you because of whatever, taking you down another trail or something.
Not. I thought so at first, but they said things in such a way that if they're lying, it's a pretty convincing lie because it makes sense with everything that went on with Gamergate, because it goes back to that. Basically, Milo's ghostwriters thing started when Gamergate was starting out. And when Milo became more popular, he needed help to run his whole shebang. And you have this willing group of followers who would drop in a dime to do whatever Milo wanted, really. And that's how Milo was able to build himself a team of his own. And it kind of explains the whole fact of how Milo functions as a brand today. I mean, it's really logical to assume, Gamergate was how this team was formed. So they told me the writing process. And this is the part I found real interesting. It's basically they shoot it back and forth in a bunch of emails, and they toss ideas out to Milo. Milo tosses things back. They talk to each other, and Milo is the face because he's got the personality. So while things might be released under Milo's name, it's actually a bunch of people, of other people who want their own ideas shared in a more visible way, and I can understand that completely.
While Milo gets the mola, of course, but yeah, I get your point.
It's gratifying to see people talking about what your thoughts are. That's what I was told.
Right.
And I can completely understand that. There's. I mean, they didn't exactly say we're going to form a ghostwriter team or something like that. It starts out as one or two guys or girls, and then it goes to 3 or 4, and then so on and so forth.
The lie just get out of hand. Yeah, no, I get it.
It's not a it's nothing malicious. It's just something that kind of happened, you know.
Well, he has to obviously answer for those things if they're true. That's for sure. So it's, again, I'll go back to that question, but is he a businessman? Does he have other things planned? Is there other issues?
Milo is smart but lazy. He can pick up on something, but the legwork that goes into getting things set up, doing all the like setting up a podcast, for example. You mess around on like 2 or 3 computers, making sure everything's set up, and then you talk. Milo prefers to just do the talking part and let other people do all the preparation work.
Yeah, you leave that to the guys, you see. So what happened? Let's just return to this. What happened with the white privilege grant? Explain that to us, and how much money there was involved. What was Milo's idea about that?
Milo, according to Google News, he raised $100,000, which seems like a fair number. And it goes back to what I was saying before about Ralph Retort's Slack group, actually, because, and it's the only reason I brought it up, because at the time, when I brought up the fact that someone from that group or connected to that group was going to leak on him, Milo got furious with me and said, like, I was destroying the most important thing to him, when I was just trying to help him, fix this problem of someone leaking on him. That's all I was doing. I was trying to do him a favor, and he got mad at me. And he was very protective of his charity grant at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the leaker wanted to use things Margaret joked. She made like some jokes in poor taste or whatever. God forbid, huh? And someone was going to try and use that as leverage to take down Milo. And I was like, no way, Jose. And that was fun cleaning up. But then come August, I hear that Milo transferred the money to his personal bank account. And Margaret was basically ousted from Milo's group of people. It doesn't feel right to me,
Right. No, of course not. So that money since hasn't been seen, or what's the plan? I mean, he was supposed to give this to, was it just one person or a few people, or what was the idea with the money?
I heard there were applicants. I would have to double check what Margaret said specifically. I mean, she's been if you follow at Margaret's Belly on Twitter, I think she has that name because she's like a belly dancer or something. But you just have to look at her Twitter feed. She's very open about this sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now, and she has a lot of comments about this. She obviously has been on the inside. She's talking a lot about the book deal too. We'll get to that. But yeah, so the money has not been seen since that point, which basically
the Milo son of a gun. Right after this whole thing happened, and Margaret was coming out with things, Milo made a Facebook post saying he's got it under control, which is nice and it's reassuring, but to me, it sounds like he just wants us to all forget about what's going on, and he threw all the skeptics a bone.
Yeah, he said he had been registering a 501c company, I think, or is that a charity, I guess? Yeah, the charity, right? And then new donors have been coming in since that point, and yeah, I guess he's still kind of just, what do you call it? He's fishing people's interest and saying, yeah, it's coming, it's fine, right? So do you think that day will come when that money will be seen?
I don't know either way anymore. I would, once upon a time, I would either say yes or no, but after everything that's come out about Milo, about his elaborate parties and how he disappears for days on end from Breitbart, even he could disappear from Breitbart's radar for a few days, and they don't know where the HE double hockey sticks he's gone. But
was it you? Nick, who tweeted about his supposed drug dealer somewhere. Was that in Virginia or something, or West Virginia?
Oh no, yeah, that goes back to the Kevin Curve Me Cordova. He's very, very well versed in what drugs are, and he's got one hell of a colorful criminal record, which Margaret just calls him a felon, and there's reason to dispute that claim, but it's not disputable to say he's had trouble with the law. And I'm careful about that because I want to do fair by the guy, even though he reacted very poorly online once he saw what I was tweeting about him.
Right.
But yeah, from what I've been told, Kevin Cordova is basically Milo's fall guy for whenever Milo gets questioned about drug use.
All right.
And if you think about it, it just makes sort of sense that someone who tours around the country would dabble in that sort of thing. I mean, what? I don't think Milo would keep Kevin around for much of another reason. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into what Milo does with these people, but I assume it's for recreational purposes and not professional ones.
Yeah, maybe it blends together at some point too. That seems to be the brand he's going for, huh?
I don't understand what Milo's doing there. I cannot explain why he would be so. I guess because it seems provocative to have what's basically a fuck boy carried around.
Yeah, isn't this? I mean, let's just look at the broader picture of celebrities too. I mean, this is a lot of them are, frankly, they're. I'm not saying everyone's like Milo, but I'm just saying many of them are kind of. They just live their lifestyle. They don't really care about much. That they do drugs. It's all debauchery and degeneracy and stuff. And he's no different. Despite his supposed, I don't know, fascist attitudes or something, or whatever the mainstream says is associated with the alt-right. He certainly doesn't fulfill that now, does he?
Yeah, there's so many different angles and sides to this. Milo, if he was the shape, there would be so many sides and faces to it. You wouldn't be able to keep your head straight looking at the thing. There's what the media says. There's what Milo is. There's what, Milo's ghostwriters tried to say what Milo is. Then there's essentially what people think he is in general. And then there's what Milo thinks he is. That's another side. And there's what people who are skeptics of Milo think he is. And there's people who praise Milo and think he's something else. And at the end of the day, that's the only reason this whole thing has gone on for so long, is because people have their own ideas of what's right and what's wrong when they're not willing to step outside that box. The fact that nobody is looking into the charity thing is basically a warning sign to not just Breitbart, but the public, that something is up, and to see it pushed into this box of routine of how people react to things is sad, because people are going to forget about it again. They will. Yeah,
they always do. Unfortunately, people have a short memory.
Right. And Milo is a master of this system, because Gamergate was a framework of how to operate himself in this media sphere that we're in.
Let's talk about, before we take a short break here and proceed in the second segment with you, Nick, but deplorables. Give us a quick kind of roundup on that if you can, and then we can get into details more in the second segment. But it was obviously put on by Cernovich, and I think it was Milo that ended up talking about how he needed to be the kind of the keynote speaker and everything, right? What happened there?
Yeah, I forgot to mention this part earlier, but yeah, Milo wanted to be a part of this deplorable thing. And it's very telling that he wanted to be part of this deplorable thing, because let me pull up the emails that Baked Alaska posted, because it's better to have those in front of you. But what you were saying about bandwagoning earlier on, it makes sense when you consider Milo wanted to be the face of this event, and the fact that Milo and Baked Alaska weren't able to come to some sort of mutual agreement is what fractured this whole thing. December 31st, December... Trying to find these emails, but I can't... I think he deleted them.
That's too bad.
Man, yeah, that was kind of the most damning part of this. But what was advertised by Cernovich is the idea of this being a sort of classy experience, sort of, I don't know what to call it besides the alt-right's version of a PC experience. It was supposed to be something where all the best of the best would show up, and something to celebrate Trump's inauguration. It's basically a climax of what this whole election process has been, and it was supposed to be this sort of victory party of sorts.
And didn't Cernovich also invite media to this thing? Because remember what happened previously with MPI and Richard Spencer, right? I mean, Cernovich was just freaking, and we were there. We covered the thing live. It was lots of fun, a lot of good people. What I would call the real alt-right, frankly, not just the alt-light. But anyway, Cernovich, he freaked out at Spencer, right, for inviting the media to this thing. And there's a lot of things. I can't even get into that now. The story's too long. But the way thing unfolded was basically a combination of timing and then very sly media, handling of the situation by the Atlantic specifically, and about that whole debacle that happened with the salutes and all that stuff. It was a fun thing. It was basically a big, fuck you and middle finger to the establishment, and a lot of people did that because it's a lot of fun. Anyway, Cernovich was freaking out about that, and then he does, what my point is, then he basically go and does the same thing himself, right?
That's the most interesting part about the whole thing. Cernovich's concerns weren't unfounded, but it's very strange to see him doing, the same thing he was against. And that's basically, that sort of double standard is what Gamergate capitalized on and, pushed forward that conversation for 2.5 years, is the idea that people aren't what they say they are.
Yeah, that is correct. And he's also, of course, Cernovich is his own kind of brand and whatever. Let's talk more about... Yeah, exactly. Let's talk
something
more
with a gorilla.
Something with a mindset, Anyway, let's talk more about that in the second segment. We're going to take a short break here and then return with more. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Nick Monroe. And I just want to ask you if there's any... I mean, obviously, as you said, you write for...
I had a regular gig at The Escapist magazine and Game Ranks throughout most of 2016, but I'm mostly a freelancer right now.
Is there any other, beyond Twitter, places where people should, read your work or follow you or anything like that?
No, it's mostly Twitter for now. And I'm fine with that. I mean, too many places online, it gets confusing.
It sure,
find me
sure does.
Oh, wait. No, I'm on Gab. I have a name on Gab. I reserved a name. And whenever Twitter eventually bans me for one reason or another, I'll probably end up on there.
Do you remember your username there for people?
Same thing. NickMon1112.
All right, NickMon1112. Follow him on Gab. And also, of course, for now, then, he is on Twitter, where you can check some of his work and a lot of good exposure that Nick has done about the situation. So we're glad to have him here on the show talking more about it and try to just kind of unravel the situation with Milo and Cernovich and the white privilege grant and the book deals and everything else. We'll continue to talk more about that in the second segment. Stay with us, Nick. Stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back after a short break. Well, ladies and gentlemen, hour 2 with Nick Monroe is coming up after the break. If you want to hear more, get the second hour with a subscription at redicemembers.com. Full access to all our shows. And of course, this includes our live TV show as well, which we'll be doing January the 14th, the first one of the new year, so definitely don't miss that. A lot to talk about. All right, but we'll be right back with Nick Monroe. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you on the other side.